Coming up on Jerusalem Dateline, what's next when it comes to dealing with the Islamic Republic of Iran? More back and forth with proxies or full-on conflict with the head of the snake? And a look at the race toward nuclear weapons by the Khamenei regime. Plus, celebrating Persian and Israeli bravery through murals and the heritage shared by the Jewish and the Iranian people. All this and more coming up on this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Hello and welcome to the special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. I'm Chris Mitchell. Our focus today is on Iran, and we'll start off with an accomplished writer and analyst whose career has included reporting, newspaper editing, teaching as a professor, and advising the Israeli government. Dr. Michael Widlanski has seen a lot, and we asked him about Iran today. Dr. Michael Widlanski, just a few weeks ago, there was an attack by Iran. What threat does Iran pose to the Jewish state?
Iran is basically a huge spider that's given birth to a lot of little spiders. And it likes to stay in the background and send its little creatures to do its work for it. Hezbollah, Hamas, Houthis, the three H's. They go after Israel from their various angles, and Iran stays in the background. And Iran uses these people, exploits them. It doesn't use its own manpower. It uses Arabs. It uses Lebanese. It uses Yemenites, the Houthis. Now it had to come out from under its rock and shoot its own missiles, shoot its own drones at Israel. And that shows the world what's really been happening for a long time. Iran is really an Islamic Nazi empire.
How robust of a military do you think Iran has right now?
I think Iran is a paper tiger. Sure, it's a big country, it's a huge country, but they have several serious problems. They gutted their own military when the Islamic Revolution took power, and they don't really have a successful military. They've tried. They've developed certain industries, but they're not very advanced, and thank God the Israelis have done their part to keep them running behind. It's clear that they don't have command and communication skills. They don't have what it needs to really project power. That's why they want an atomic bomb.
And what would that do to the Middle East if they seem to be quite close. The director of the IAEA says they're weeks away from getting enriched uranium to military grade.
It's the biggest failure of the Western world, allowing the Iranian maniacs to get an atomic bomb would allow them to project power. If they can use hostages to get people to surrender to them, imagine what they'll be able to do with the threat of atomic weapons. It is an absolute sin to let them to get atomic weapons. And the US, under Barack Obama and Joe Biden, should have done a lot more, not only to stop the atomic weapon, but to stop the ability to project power through terrorist proxies. It seems that this current US administration is much more interested in stopping Israel from attacking Iran and Hezbollah and Hamas than it is in getting Iran to stop attacking its neighbors.
And they've also seemed to have released at least $16 billion in sanctions relief to the Islamic regime.
And let's not forget the hundreds of millions of dollars that they gave them in cash. You and I can't send bank transfers easily, but if you're Barack Obama and Joe Biden, you can actually put the cash on a plane in various denominations and unmarked bills and send it direct to your friendly neighborhood Ayatollah. That's terrific. That's really smart. That's not soft power. That's not hard power. That's soft-headed power.
What do you say to the final motivation, the final goals of Iran, the Islamic Republic?
You know that the Iranians are the only people who are proud to call themselves pure Aryans, like the Nazis? They're so proud of their pure-bloodedness. They actually hate the Arabs. That's why they use them as proxies. They hate the Jews. They think if you touch a Jew, the impurity rubs off on your skin in rainy weather. That's horrible, horrible culture that they've encouraged. Specifically under the Shah, he moved them more towards the modern West. and that would have been good, and moderated religion. The Ayatollah Khomeini and now Ayatollah Khamenei, they're really black-robed, black figures. They hate cooperation, they hate music, they hate decency. They're worshipers of Islamic fire, tribal fire. That's what they are.
How should the West and the U.S., and Israel for that matter, confront the Islamic Republic?
Any war should be prosecuted not by one means, but by several means. We call this combined arms theory. You don't just use your left hand, you don't just use your right hand, you use everything, and you put your hip into it. This means you use monetary power, economic power, political power, and military power. You don't take anything off the table, and you use them all, sometimes sequentially, sometimes at the same time. There is no reason for the Iranian regime to have economic access to anything in the world. There's no reason that they should be inside the United Nations. They're actually heading committees in the United Nations. That shouldn't exist. And there's no reason that their military barracks, their bomb laboratories should not be destroyed immediately. Not by a government decision, but by big bombs. That works very well. The best solution for a terrorist and for a terror regime is to kill it. Not to play with it, not to try and pick with it, and not to negotiate with it.
Dr. Michael Widlanski, thanks for being with us here on CBN. Another expert with a long view of Middle East conflicts is Yigal Carmon, one of the founders of the Middle East Media Research Institute. In a recent conversation, he spoke about the Iranian regime's long-term strategy to conquer Israel by getting control of Jordan. It's a strategy that would affect the entire region. Take a look.
And what is their immediate direct target right now? The Kingdom of Jordan. They want to remove the king through demonstrations that are mounting in Amman every day. They call for the removal of the king. They call for removing the Americans in Jordan. There are big bases there. And if they manage to get that, this will be a major blow to Israel, more than hitting some target.
How fragile is the Kingdom of Jordan and how vulnerable it is to Iran?
It's tough to know, and surely Israel will help Jordan, surely America will help Jordan. Saudi Arabia already said Jordan is a red line, because if Jordan falls, the kingdom falls, it will be devastating to Israel, but also to the United States of America. But we are talking here about the interest of America in the Middle East, to make sure that the Iranians don't manage to get their goal, to make the whole Middle East into a under Iranian hegemony. This is exactly what the Iranians are aspiring to, to turn over the regime in Jordan. It's huge, and America should deal with its strategic interest.
Great analysis, Yigal, and thanks for giving us a perspective sort of behind the scenes that really brings things to light. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Coming up, is Iran making greater strides in its nuclear program than the world realizes? The shadow war between Iran's proxies and Israel could be obscuring a deeper evil, Iran's nuclear program. Analysts say the window is closing on which it can be stopped. Here's the latest. As Israel fights Hamas in the south and prepares for a potentially greater conflict with Hezbollah in the north, Iran remains a major player behind the chaos. That could be due to the regime trying to distract the world from what's happening with the country's nuclear program.
Whether it is a formal strategy or it's just happening that way, it's absolutely a danger. Iran threw out the nuclear inspectors, 8 most important ones, in September 2023. They tripled the speed of enriching uranium for most of the last few months. between 60% and 20% enriched uranium.
Experts believe the regime has enough uranium to make up to 8 nuclear weapons.
They could enrich to 90% weaponized uranium in like a week or two. Israel, the United States, the world is very distracted by Hamas, Hezbollah, and the rest of the world by Ukraine. So could Iran try to break out now? Yeah.
Iran claims it successfully launched 3 satellites earlier this year. Bob sees this as especially significant in terms of weapons delivery systems.
The technology they use for launching satellites can also be used potentially for nuclear weapons, in particular ICBMs, which can go a lot further. As far as we know, they're not there yet, but we have to keep a very strong eye on that too.
Rafael Grossi, chief of the International Atomic Energy Agency, recently reported that Iran continues to prevent access to inspectors and video recorded by cameras at key nuclear sites.
We must move forward in the clarification of the many aspects that require this from Iran. All countries that have signed the Nuclear Non-Proliferation Treaty are not supposed to have nuclear weapons in any form. This is forbidden in international law.
Bob says Iran is effectively blinding the world to the country's nuclear progress.
It's a very dangerous situation, and it's problematic. The IAEA Board of Governors, has basically decided to do nothing about it, certainly not referring it to the UN Security Council.
Bob maintains sanctions from the original 2015 nuclear deal could be reintroduced through a snapback arrangement, but this provision has a time limit.
If the United States and the 3 key European countries want to snap back, they can snap it back, and the entire UN Security Council would need to enforce it. When you get to October 2025, January 2026, so many of the limits on Iran fall apart that Israel, and I hope the United States, will need to make a decision to do something, potentially militarily, with Iran if it does not radically reduce where its nuclear program is today.
Retired General Amir Avivi, head of the Israel Defense Security Forum, sees Iran's nuclear threat in a global context.
If Israel has to go to all full-scale war with Lebanon, this is our chance also to hit Iran and all the nuclear sites. So really, if the U.S. wants to avoid a regional and maybe global war, it needs to show leadership and really deter Iran and Hezbollah. This is the only way to stabilize the Middle East.
Avivi also uses more of a moral perspective to describe Israel's war with Iran's proxies.
It's a war between darkness and light, between evil and good. We're fighting the whole Western society's war against extremism, against people who really want to destroy our way of living.
Up next, inspiration from Israeli and Iranian women heroes and celebrating them through art. Iran's current government may be an enemy of Israel, but historically there's a strong connection between the two countries. Iranian-American filmmaker Humman Halili has made it his mission to show support for oppressed Iranian women and Israel through murals. Humman, great to see you back here in the studio. We've talked about your murals for many months. The latest one is really one of the most you're excited about, and we have it here back in the monitor. Tell us about it.
Thanks so much for having me, Chris. Yeah, this next mural, it's in Tel Aviv, and every time I do a mural, I get a little bit more bold. So what the first one was 4 women who were just united by their hair because they were all killed for showing their hair. Mm-hmm. In this one here, the 9th mural, what you have is not only 5 distinct pictures, you have a story. You have the story of God's plan for Iran. So this mural, as I said, is in Tel Aviv, starts off with Jeremiah 49:38, where God says, I will set my throne in Elam and destroy her kings and officials. Every time I tell somebody Elam is Iran, they don't believe me. Elam, the place where Cyrus the Great was born, the place where Queen Esther is buried, and the place where Daniel the prophet lived. Elam. This is Elam. So that's how the mural starts. Next to the map of Iran and Elam is Queen Esther. Okay? The whole book of Esther, because no preacher ever says this from the pulpit, takes place in Elam. It takes place in Iran. The whole book does. And above Queen Esther is Esther 4:14, which every preacher boils down to, you were chosen for such a time as this. Arguably the most famous verse within that book. Next to Queen Esther is a woman named Kosar. And Kosar won the silver medal in archery for Iran. But she protested along with the women. And as a result of protesting the Islamic regime, they have these little guns with pellets and they shot out one of her eyes. So I have her riding a lion with a bow and arrow in her hand. Strength, a true woman warrior. And above her is Hosea 11:10. And Hosea 11:10 basically says, when the lion roars, my children will come back trembling from the west. It's a call. It's a call. God saying to the Jews, return to the land. Next to Kosar is Sherel Haim-Pur. Sherel Haim-Pur is a Persian Jewish soldier who was killed by Hamas on October 7th. And it was her very last weekend as being an IDF soldier. And she decided to grab her gun and go into the battle. Hamas killed her, burned her body, made her unrecognizable. And so I put her in because she too is a strong female warrior. And then the last symbol is basically two hands. One hand is the flag of Jerusalem. The other hand is the Shah's flag, the flag with the lion holding a sword with the sun rising in his back, forming a heart. And above that, I put Jeremiah 49:39, which is basically God saying, I'm going to reestablish the fortunes of Elam. I'm going to destroy her kings and officials in 38. I'm going to reestablish her fortunes in 39. Because there are many goals with these murals. I want to inspire the people of Iran to keep fighting for their freedom. But really, I hope and pray that Iran and Israel will be friends again today as they have been for 3,000 years.
I don't think a lot of people understand that and know that there has been a historic ancient connection between the Persian people and the Jews.
Yeah, that's exactly right. All the Persian Jews are from 500 BC. They're all from the time of Esther. When you talk to a lot of scholars about Judaism, they'll say the Persian Jews are the purest Jews, and they've kept and maintained their tradition for so long. And today, to this day, in Iran right now, there's still 15,000 Iranian Persian Jews in Iran.
Well,
yeah.
Well, kol hakavod, Humman. Amazing mural, and what a story and a message.
Yes.
For such a time as this.
Thank you.
Still ahead, a heritage of friendship. Iran may be Israel's biggest enemy at the moment, but it wasn't always that way. Thank you for watching Jerusalem Dateline. We're committed to providing you with unbiased reporting from the Holy Land. Through weekly broadcasts, podcasts, and online media, our vision is to reach millions around the globe with the true story of what's happening in Israel and the Middle East, all from a biblical and prophetic perspective. This is a big vision and is only made possible by the generous support of people like you.
Call us toll-free at 1-800-700-7000 or go to cbn.com/Jerusalem Dateline and make a donation that will help spread the light of truth about Israel throughout the world.
Iran's current regime may be Israel's sworn enemy, but it wasn't always that way. Thousands of years ago, Persia played an important role in the history of the Jewish people. Iranian-American Marziyeh Amirizadeh, who was held captive in an Iranian prison after she became a Christian, explains more. Marziyeh, a lot of people may not realize that Israel and Iran, or Persia, ancient Persia, have really had a connection that goes back thousands of years. How would you describe that?
Yeah, unfortunately, since 1979, the Islamic Republic regime tried to undermine and hide the history of friendship that Iranians had with people of Israel. And look at, as you mentioned, when you read the history, you see that the first king of Persian king, King Cyrus, in his first reign, he supported Jewish people. Jewish people were in captivity for about 70 years under Nebuchadnezzar, but King Cyrus allowed them to go back to Jerusalem and to build their city. And not only allow them to go back, release them from the captivity, but also return all their vessels that was taken from them. He allowed them to build their honor, their dignity. And then King Cyrus, he helped Jewish people to build their second temple. And Queen Esther in Bible, we see that she was an amazing queen that she revealed the plot with Haman, and she talked to the king Xerxes and stopped the genocide of Jewish people. And these amazing people, all their graves are in Iran, like Queen Esther, King Cyrus, and Mordecai. But majority of Iranian people have no idea about this. They don't know the history because the Islamic Republic regime doesn't want the people to know the truth, the friendship, the shared values that we had. And I was thinking, why was that? Why all those kings always supported Jewish people? And I felt because they understood that Jewish people are chosen by God. These are chosen people of God, and they respected that. They respected their God. And that's why, you know, that's the reason I tell that I, as a Christian, I love Israel, and I stand and support Israel.
Well, that's all for this special edition of Jerusalem Dateline. Thanks for joining us. Remember, you can follow us on social media, and you can access CBN content through our CBN News and other CBN apps. Please continue to pray for the peace of Jerusalem and the safety of IDF soldiers and for all those caught in harm's way. I'm Chris Mitchell. We'll see you next time on Jerusalem Dateline.